Let's get into this really quickly, talking about how our kids are being harmed. And there you have one getting blown away on a porch at your own house. America is supposed to be, the West used to be safe. How are white children affected, aside from being blown away? Janitor of White Noir says, carving out a subcontinent of Central America. Example, Disney cucks would say this news headline sarcastically. Oh, about the young white boy being shot dead? Disgusting. Let's talk about the effects on white children. Anti-whiteism effects on white children. You may feel embarrassed to realize we have been tricked into acting in ways harmful to ourselves, our countries, and our people. As adults, we like to think of ourselves as tough, independent, and resistant to manipulation. And then I asked you to recall vignettes that are earlier in the book. Recall the vignettes about the children, Buddy Smith, Tommy, and Lily. A white child's view of himself, his kind, and every other group of people is taught to him, imposed on him by anti-whites. And remember, when our children come back to our parents, their parents and grandparents and uncles and aunts, those people too are infected by anti-whiteism. How are they going to be able to fix the brainwashing? They can't. They can't fix it. Evidence of how they can't fix it? Jason, how do you know? You don't slap as hard as you think. Listen, Veg, where are we today? If white parents could have fixed the brainwashing at school and in the media, entertainment, and news, we wouldn't be here today, would we? The anti-white worldview is a crippling and disfiguring power which compromises physical, mental, and spiritual health of all white children. Has our health and our resistance to victimization been compromised? How do you see it playing out in this debate over H-1B visas? How are we supposed to defend ourselves when we have come to believe and been crippled by the idea that America is not us? It's not our projection into the world. And we've been crippled with the notion that it's immoral to even think that. Well, we talked about it for several hours. If it's not us, it's an opinion that everyone on planet Earth can have. The timing of this abusive indoctrination is particularly destructive because the minds of white children are still forming, making children the most vulnerable to the devastating effects of anti-whiteism. I want you to remember that the anti-whiteism that you can very easily on a chart say, well, that's anti-white and that's anti-white and that's anti-white, is not the only anti-whiteism that there is. There is a great bit of anti-whiteism that isn't even used today because it was for a previous age. It was used by the anti-whites of those ages to move the dial, to harm white people, to divest white people a little bit, which is as much as they could do at a time in another age. So it's not only the anti-whiteism that you see today. When you think that way, if you're midwit and you're thinking that way, then what you end up thinking is in this linear, two-dimensional fashion. And I was really just shaking my head the other day, thinking about how do you communicate a three-dimensional view that is born out of genetics, IQ, to people who don't have the ability. You break it down as simply as possible, as I do, but it's not just on the communicator that there is a burden, but it's also on the recipients of the information for them to be humble and understand that while they might not be able to understand what's working, it works, and move forward with it. The lies and manipulations of anti-whiteism disfigure their thought processes and their deductive and logical reasoning abilities. Their white noir can present as any number of physical diseases and psychiatric disorders. Physical diseases and psychiatric disorders. Every generation. Do the physical diseases and psychiatric disorders not get worse? The anti-whiteism gets worse. These disorders and diseases get worse. Every generation. When I write of white children, get ready for the curveball, I mean all white children. No child escapes MP infection, no matter the child or the upbringing. You may think that you are an exception because of your conservative or religious upbringing. Sadly, you are wrong. No child escapes the abuse of anti-whiteism and MPs in modernity. A white positive woman named Mary illustrates this fact, and this is a real person. Mary firmly believed that she was infected with only 5 MPs. So she said, well, I can only think of 5 ideas that I hold that are deleterious and harmful for the white race. She claimed that her parents had been very conservative and had dutifully disabused her of many anti-white superstitions during her childhood. And I want you to reflect upon the responses that we see from these cuck-servatives to this debate about H-1B visas. Are you protected by cuck-servative thought? The suggestion that she might be extensively infected offended Mary. It felt to her like an attack on her parents for failing to protect her, as well as an insult to her intelligence. How many times, and you might not have faced it as much, but over the years I could tell you, I have faced it numerous times, where people in the white sympathetic sphere, mostly explicit, but sometimes implicit as well, because you're talking more about it in the explicit sphere, they get offended. They're like, I know, my parents knew, we knew. And then when they relax, you find out, oh, they were anti-white as well. Oh, your brother married a black woman. Oh, and you find out so much more. To Mary's credit, however, she eventually acknowledged that we have all been deeply deceived. She accepted that her parents couldn't have protected her from everything. She realized her intelligence could not have protected her in her childhood because as children, we are innocent and trusting. And remember, you don't reevaluate. It's not normal for a person, unbidden by an outsider like me, to reevaluate the very essence of your identity. And that's what these meme pathogens, these anti-white concepts, are when they were taught to you at such a young age. Childhood is a time when the mental tools we use to understand the world are still forming. That acceptance and vulnerability enabled her to truly begin going free. All going free means, to those who are like, what is that? I never would have thought that anybody would think that that was some sort of mysterious thing. You're just going away, going out of, going free of anti-white concepts. That's all it means. Chill out. Though horrified by the scope of her condition, Mary tripled her efforts to go free and was mightily rewarded. Just as an undiagnosed cancer cannot be treated, undiagnosed MPs cannot be identified and neutralized. Big part of inoculating yourself and treating yourself for anti-white concepts. Your conscious mind and saying, I know better with your conscious mind does not do that. Anti-whiteism engenders thoughts that penetrate deeply into the subconscious, infecting the minds of white children with inescapably illogical deductions that damage their health. These infections set the stage for short and long-term disease and psychiatric disorder. I wonder how many people today we see out in the streets thinking crazy things about themselves and the world. And I wonder how much of that is a consequence of the injury caused by anti-whiteism. You think that a person could have a nervous breakdown, that they could snap because work is a lot of pressure and maybe they got something else going on and they break down and their personality dissolves, and you think that, but you don't think this would do it? Told that you're evil because your essence is evil, you've come from an evil people, and that you need to be divested and abused and exploited, but at the same time, you're forced at the national stage, the public stage, to pretend that you are some inheritor of all of this ease and wealth and your life is so perfect. You don't think that would cause people to snap? I'd also point out here, anti-whiteism engenders thoughts and that penetrate deeply into the subconscious, infecting the minds of white children with inescapably illogical deductions, damage their health. What about Randy's daughter? How did she end up assuming what she thought was a moral pushback on her father's objections to anti-whiteism? Wrong placed, misplaced. Where did that come from? If Randy had continued down that course, wouldn't his daughter have ended up to various degrees like so many other white kids out there? I can't tell you, honestly. It's many white people who have come to me and said they did their best with their kids. They said all the right. They told them the truth about things. And yet they ended up radically anti-white. The daughter now thinks she's a son. The daughter thinks she's a son who is attracted to girls. And there has a lesbian girlfriend, boyfriend, and she has a boyfriend, whatever. How many times they've come, many more times they've come and said, oh, the daughter or son, only attracted to non-whites, married non-whites, had children with non-whites, told about great that they had no value for our race. I don't know what went wrong. How many times do we have to hear that in this community? To see people turning folks around. Such illogical deductions encourage bad and irrational decision-making in white children in every area of their lives. Personal interaction, education, drug use, sexuality, recklessness, betrayal of, and fanatical opposition to Western kind, etc. Have you seen or suspected such factors in your own or someone else's life? Might your displeasure with your body or appearance be attributable to anti-white notions? Could your friend's drug addiction or suicide have its root in a hopelessness encouraged by anti-whiteism? Could your unemployment or lack of promotion be a consequence? Could your unemployment, is anybody hearing me? Can I get an amen? Especially with this debate going on. Could your unemployment or lack of promotion be a consequence of anti-white beliefs in yourself and others? Written right here, perfectly describing this H-1B visa debate many, many years prior to this. Not a novelty take, my friends, a remedy. Page 110, second edition, iteration 2, go free.